Hello, everyone. This is the Melbourne Traditionalists podcast, episode 40. I'm Mark Moncrief from Upon Hope, and today I would like to talk about the success of our movement and all the goals that we're kicking. But I'm not going to, because that would all be a lie. This episode is about the black pill and my black pill, about how many I have been having recently. And I think that the lockdown, the COVID-19 panic, has contributed to that. But actually, there are things that have happened online where I'm just thinking, why am I bothering? What is the point of what I'm doing? And what is the point of what we're all supposed to be doing? Now, I've had people say things that I personally don't agree with, and maybe I should give a bit of personal history to explain my where I'm coming from. So about a decade ago, I was in a relationship and it all ended horribly. And she was obviously over me and I wasn't totally over her. And I gave her a lot of the benefit of the doubt. And then I asked myself, why am I doing that? Why am I helping somebody who's not prepared to help me? And I decided that if someone wasn't on my side, then I shouldn't be on theirs. And politically, that was a very important thing because it really focused my attention on the government and all the ways that they were not on my side. And it was a big encouragement to become active. So out of that cabal, I felt I got at least something out of it, a new attitude. It wasn't necessarily a good attitude, but it was an attitude, and it was something that propelled me along. But it also meant that I became much less forgiving, and things that I would once have just brushed aside, I now questioned, and I wondered, hey, are these people on my side? When things go bad, whose side are they on? And I had a friend who I had been friends with for 30 years. You know, we met in school. We were best friends for a long, long time. And, you know, over the years we'd been close and not so close and so forth. But, you know, we'd been friends for 30 years. And then I realised that, hey, the invasion of Australia, he was on board with it. He liked it. He thought it was a great thing. And I went, no, fuck off. And I ended our friendship. 30 years. And I have often questioned what I'm doing in the movement, trying to get things to work. I keep harping on about organisation and how we have to take things offline and into the real world, and how we have to form organisations. And, you know, I keep feeling that every time I've taken a step forward, I find out that it's just like going for a ride on an exercise bike. The scenery doesn't change. You know, you put all this effort in and you're really pedaling, and you're going nowhere. And that's never been what I wanted to do. And I contacted Mark Richardson from Oz Conservative, and we met up. And that's where the Melbourne Traditionalists started, with that meeting. You know, we didn't know it was going to go from there, but that really was the start. And after that, the two of us met, and then it was about 6 months later, and we got a third person, and slowly we began to develop a group. And originally it was called the Eltham Traditionalists. And then about 4 years ago, it became the Melbourne Traditionalists. But all through that time, it was about building a organisation, building a community, and moving forward. And a lot of people who have come into the Melbourne Traditionalists have left for whatever reason. I really don't know. But myself and Mark Richardson have stayed. We've remained as members and as organisers. And over the years, we've both put in a lot of effort to make the Melbourne Traditionalists as successful as it can be. And it's, to be honest, over the years, it has proven to be a disappointment to me, which obviously was not what I set out to do. I did not set out to create an organisation that I'd be disappointed in. And the reason for the disappointment is the lack of agency, the lack of just the passivity of people. Instead of doing things, there's always a reason not to do things. And because the Melbourne Traditionalists have been so reluctant to become active, I have been active with other people and other groups. And a lot of those people are nationalists. And actually, I think, in most cases, 85, 90% of what traditionalists and nationalists want are the same. And there's only that 10, 15% that is different. But sometimes that difference seems a lot. It seems a real lot. And sometimes I ask myself, why am I associating with these people? It's not because they're bad people. It's not because we don't have things in common. As I said, we do. But sometimes I just feel that what they think is too wacky. So I have recently saw a guy post on Facebook about how he wishes that we'd lost World War II. And I'm like, what is a nationalist? How is it that you don't love your country? How is it that you want your country to lose wars? I mean, it just baffles me. I just don't have any comprehension at all. And their attitude to the royal family. Yeah, I'm a traditionalist. Of course I'm a royalist. And many of them will say, oh, I'm a royalist too. But then they'll come up with really stupid things like, the Queen, she hasn't done anything to stop what's happened. Well, neither of you or I. I mean, we may not like it, but what have we done to stop it? Nothing. They say, oh, it's different. She's got all this power. No, she doesn't have any power. All she has is prestige. And that prestige has to be kept away from the politicians. That's a pretty important thing, right? But they can't comprehend this. They think that the Queen stands up in Parliament and says, one year I support A, and then the next year she gets up and says, I do not support A. Well, that's because she doesn't write her speeches. That's because she has to say what other people want, particularly the government of the day, right? And they put all these, they think she's an absolute monarch instead of a constitutional monarch. Well, maybe it'd be better if she was an absolute monarch, but she's not. And they know that. And then they pretend that they don't know it. And then there's the constant kerfuffle about the Jews, and I've been thinking recently about how it's very much like COVID-19 and how, the media is just obsessed with this disease and they talk about it incessantly. And, they talk about how many people have the disease, how many people have died, occasionally how many people have got better from it. And every other disease in the world has vanished. There's no cancer anymore. Hallelujah, brothers. There's no tuberculosis. There's no anything. The only disease in the world is COVID-19. And that's what happens with the Jewish question. It's 100% Jews all the time. And it's just ridiculous. But as I said, the reason that I associate with these people is not just because they're good people. They are good people, but because they actually want to do stuff. And the traditionalists don't want to do stuff. And when I ask traditionalists, they say, oh, what we want is we want a community. All right, fine. How are you going to do that? How is this community going to take place when you won't commit any resources to it, you won't commit your time to it, and you won't commit any effort to it? And it seems that people have this fantasy, and the fantasy is what gets them through the day. All right, but it doesn't help me any, and it doesn't help our cause any either. I recently sent out an email to members of the Melbourne Traditionalists, and I said, hey, we're all isolated because of COVID-19. Let's actually use this time to advance our cause. Why don't we have one person look after a different social media platform, right? And, if we had 5 people, then there'd be 5 different platforms, and we could actually advance our cause. We could actually let more people know that we exist and advance what we believe. And I received one reply, and he said, hey, it's not my thing. I can't help. Hey, at least it's a reply. And then I sent off some text messages saying, hey, what's going on? And I received one reply again. From a different man, and he says, oh, I've been busy, I can't help. All right, well, it's a reply. And it seems that there's always a reason not to do things. And I must say that I have taken this lack of response very personally. It's really gotten to me, because it's yet another indication of how little has been achieved, how little can be achieved. Because if we don't have agency, and we don't, then how do we advance? How do we actually make things happen? Now, some of you will be wondering, what's agency? Well, I wrote an article called Do Women Have Agency? And I'd just like to read the first paragraph. Agency means anything which acts or produces a result. Traditionally, nearly every culture has accepted that men have agency. Men make things happen, and that also meant that men were responsible for the outcome of those actions. Men were responsible for the government, armies, religions, and families because men were active. Traditionally, women in most cultures, although not all, were seen as having no agency. Now, that's a pretty clear divide between men and women, and I think it's true. I think it's true in the past. I think it's true now. I think it's part of human nature. But to actually have agency means you have to do stuff. You have to make things happen. And that is not evident. What I keep finding over and over and over again is people have fantasies. I have fantasies about the movement, about what I'd like to achieve, about what I'd like to do if we were in government. But I also realise that we need to have an organisation. You need to be able to do that. You can't just have 3 people and all the work gets done by them. And that's the thing. People want to have their fantasies. They want to talk about it. They want to talk about how they'll make our enemies suffer when we're in power. But when it actually comes to, hey, will you do some leafleting so that people can actually know we exist? Oh, no, I can't make that weekend. No, I can't. No, it's too far. I can't. Oh, well, what about doing some posts on Facebook or or another social media. Oh, I don't have an account. Oh, no, it's a normie account. I don't want other people to know. Oh, all right. It doesn't matter what it is. There's always an excuse not to do things. And we can't win with that. We need to have agency. And individuals need to accept responsibility. You need to accept responsibility, just like I do. And it's not enough to just read articles or listen to podcasts there's anything wrong with that. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing it if I thought there was something wrong with it. But there has to be another step. A lot of people say, I can't devote the time to this, I work. Oh, all right. Well, if you work, then that means that you can put some money towards the cause. But you never see the money. Because there's always a reason not to do stuff. There's always a reason not to have agency. And I just keep finding that it falls onto a few. And I must admit, I'm one of those few. But again, I feel like I'm riding an exercise bike. There's a lot of effort going in, a lot of pedaling, I'm puffing away, but I'm not actually getting anywhere. The scenery doesn't change. And sometimes that becomes a bit too much. And that's how I feel right now. I feel like this is all a bit too much. And I wonder whether I should be doing something else with my time. I mean, maybe I can certainly think of a lot of things that are less productive, but then I ask myself, is what I'm doing now productive? I remember after Charlottesville, when it all turned bad and so many commentators on the right just piled on, just put the boots in. And, these people were morons, they were stupid, they should never have done it, blah, blah, blah. But I was waiting for these comments before the event, and they weren't there. People weren't saying, don't do it. Overwhelmingly, people were either supportive or silent. But they weren't supportive or silent when it all went bad. And I think to myself, hey, what would have happened if the situation was totally reversed? Instead of the left being in control of the government and the police, instead of them being the counter-protesters who attacked us and were allowed to attack us, instead of one of our guys, James Field, being involved in the traffic incident and going to jail for 400 years, what would have happened if we were in charge of the government and we controlled the police and the police stood back while we attacked the left? And James Field was a leftist. What would have been the outcome? Well, the left would have screamed like stuck pigs. They would have just been, we'd hear about it every week about the injustice of Charlottesville, about how their man was a political prisoner, which he is a political prisoner. Right? He's there for political reasons. 400 years for a woman having a heart attack is absurd. But what support does he get from our side? I mean, when was the last time you heard his name? Instead of this being a red hot issue, it's like, oh, Charlottesville, that was 2 years ago. That's ancient history. Wow. I often have given an example of the difference between the right and the left. If there was a man who was calling for a mass protest, we're gonna shut this town down. And he's everywhere. There's posters. He's on TV. He's on the radio. It's all big news. And then the day of the protest, 3 people turn up. It's a complete fizzer. On the left, straight away, they would just go silent. Absolute silence. What protest? No, you misheard. You just can't understand, right? They would defend him publicly. Privately might be a totally different matter, but in public, he would never, ever be criticised, ever. But on the right, you'd never hear the end of it, right? It's just constant. And that's a big problem, that we don't support people on our side. We're quite happy for them to just do their own thing. And again, it always falls down to a handful of people, and they're expected to do things. I saw a YouTube clip that was talking about the Democratic Socialists of America, and they're talking about I think this is from 2018, and they're talking about hey guys, try and keep the chatter down and blah blah blah, and then this transvestite walks up and basically shouts in, can people stop using gendered language? And people are like, these clowns. Well, they are clowns. But you know what? They can actually organise a conference, and they can actually organise activities, and they actually organise. They can actually do stuff. And so often we can't do stuff. Last year we set up a group to do leafleting, and we supported a political candidate in the Australian federal election. And so we delivered leaflets for them, and we were there to hand out how to vote cards on the day. And it actually felt like we were doing something, like, there were possibilities. And so we set up, we kept doing it afterwards. We started leafleting for other organisations. And we got five people. And we did it once a month. And it took about 4 hours, an hour to get there, 2 hours to actually walk around, and an hour to go home. 4 hours out of a month, and we got 5 people. It was nothing as in strenuous or anything like that, but hey, there's always a reason not to do things. And if we're going to actually win, then we have to do stuff. And to be honest, I don't see how we can win. I don't see how we can improve anything, because people are just too passive. They're always ready to let somebody else take responsibility and then cut them loose if anything goes wrong. So nobody can be courageous, because everybody knows in the back of their mind that they're really on their own. And that's not how it should be. We're not libertarians. It shouldn't be every man for himself. It shouldn't be dog eat dog. It's really absurd. Which I guess leads me back to the Melbourne Traditionalists. What's the future of the Melbourne Traditionalists? I don't know. Because I feel that I've put in a lot of time and effort, and I haven't got much back for it. And there are a few people in the Melbourne Traditionalists who have risen to the occasion. But there's a lot of people who haven't. A lot of people. And they sit back, and I don't know what they want. I don't know why they're members of the Melbourne Traditionalists. I don't know what purpose it serves for them. Maybe the Melbourne Traditionalists serves as a safe space for them, a place where they can actually talk about subjects that they want to talk about. I don't know about you, but I want to do a lot more than just talk. I want to do a lot more than just complain, because it's not much to complain. I'm not saying don't complain, because there's a lot to complain about. And hey, this entire episode is about me complaining. So there you go. But in the end, things should advance. They should move. And I wonder whether the Melbourne Traditionalists have a future, whether I should be involved with the Melbourne Traditionalists, whether I should actually put as much time and effort as I have in the past into it. I feel like I've spoken to the Melbourne Traditionalists and I've got very little back for that, trying to push an agenda, trying to push things forward. And if we don't have an agenda, then what's the point? Why are we involved in politics? If you don't have an agenda, then you really have no place in politics at any level. So that's a big question that I don't have the answer to now. And maybe the people who ignored my email and have still not replied will listen to the podcast. I don't know. Maybe I'll get a reply then. Maybe people can tell me what they actually want from the Melbourne Traditionalists. And maybe we can actually achieve something. Because at the moment, we haven't achieved anything. And here we are 10 years in to the Melbourne Traditionalists, very close to 10 years. And I really wanted to be a lot further along than where we are. I really did. Well, it's not quite half an hour, but I do think I will leave it there. I think I have complained enough. Hopefully there will be a white pill episode at some point, but this has been the black pill, and if you'd like to support my work, you can go to Subscribestar and join up there. Always leave a comment if you would like, and if you've got something that you want to say about this subject, I'd very much like to hear it. Thank you very much, and have a good week, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.